All right, Josh Smith here, live at my studio, live at Flat 5, and my guest today is one of my good friends and one of the brightest voices in, this world that we live in, the blues guitar world, contemporary blues. He's not just a blues guitar player though, but that's where his heart lies, like me. And I just respect the hell out of this guy. We're around the same age. We have a lot of similar background and common stories and we're just going to shoot the shit for you right now. But, dude, it's a pleasure to have you. Please, everybody, welcome Matt Schofield.
Thanks, mate. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for those kind words. It's very nice coming from you, man. I appreciate that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, yeah. Absolutely, dude. You're one of my favorite players in the world, and there's not a lot of people that I can, truly say, oh, that guy has this understands where I'm coming from. He has the background that I have. And with
Yeah,
you and
vice versa.
Kirk and Joe,
Yeah.
we're all coming from this place. We've been doing it long enough, but we're around the same age. We have the same influences. So we can all literally bitch at each other constantly because we've all been in the
Yeah.
same place.
I think there's a lot to be said for the generational thing, actually, and like, with a lot of players as well. I mean, I'm from '77, and Joe is, and Kenny Wayne Shepherd is, and John Mayer is, and so
Hmm.
you're a bit more youthful than
79. Yeah. Kirk
yeah. But
77 too. Yeah.
I think we all are cut from the same cloth to some degree there, right? We all heard the same things at the same time, and it had the same effect on us. I think even if we came at it for different reasons, there was some kind of catalyst. I think for all of us, particularly I think with Stevie Ray for sure. So of that kind of discovery for us at a certain age.
Yeah, there's a difference between the people who saw Stevie kind of alive and the ones who just got it right when he passed, and
Yeah,
that's us, and it was
yeah,
like, yeah, I think we just were so enamored right away with
yeah.
that, especially when we were able to see it on video. Like it was just such a game changer to see that.
I
Um,
saw him on video 2 weeks before he died,
oh,
and
okay,
and
yeah,
I'd heard him like 2 or 3 months, but I only had one track, because I was a cassette generation, right? I don't know
yeah,
about you.
absolutely.
Yeah, so I had a cassette of his version of Voodoo Char from Live Alive, and my dad had put it on side B of Clapton's Journeyman album, right? And I liked the Clapton album and stuff. But then that video, I'm like, what the hell is this? I'd never heard anything like that. So then a few months later, I'm in California, and I'm like, what is that? To my dad, and he's got the Riverboat with BB and Albert Collins,
Oh,
on
really?
video.
He tape it
And
off
I what
MTV or whatever?
Yeah, VH1 or whatever. He,
Yeah.
he used to, same as us. I know you've been like digitizing all your VHS, but he used to do that. He used to keep a video in the VCR ready to go, in case something cool came on. And so I watched that, and that was like 2 weeks before he died. So I was like, okay, this is on now, man.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
he
and that's
died,
why,
so it almost put more of a punctuation on it, like
well, especially that concert, you're seeing him play with, Albert Collins and BB and wasn't Katie Webster on there? And yeah,
yeah, everybody's doing
cool
that, man.
stuff.
That's
Cool stuff.
edited, right? Like those tracks, like are edited, and it's got to
It's
be the
weird.
full thing somewhere, man. It's like,
There's got to be more to that show, without
yeah,
question. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. So okay, so that brings me back to you mentioned your dad making you tapes and playing you music. I know he turned you on to BB King, uh,
yeah.
but does your dad play?
No, he always had a guitar around, and
Just
but
because he
he didn't
loved
really
it, but he
play it.
didn't play it?
Yeah, it was one of those things. He'll tell you that a guy showed him. I can't remember. He's got one lick. I'm not even kidding. He has one, and it's. I can kind of hear it in my head. I can't think what it is. It's just like a turnaround that a guy showed him on night shift when he was a teenager in Manchester. And so he always had a guitar, but he should have learned to play it, but didn't. But it was always a guitar thing because the music he loved was all guitar playing stuff, and blues. And he was a teenager in the late '60s in the UK.
Yeah.
So the great guys were going over there before anybody knew about them here in the US, really. So he saw Freddie King and Howlin' Wolf on a double bill in Manchester, you know, and it's like that kind of. So in a way, he was hearing the same records that guys like Clapton and Keith Richards and those guys were. He was getting the same stuff that they were listening to before people knew about it here. And he's way more into, or way more knowledgeable about, you know, acoustic and Delta blues and Mississippi stuff than I am, you know. So he was always into Son House and Scrap of Blackwell and Mississippi, John Hurt, all that. Yeah, so he's. I kind of dived in at the electric thing, obviously, you know.
Okay, so he had a guitar around, but he didn't play. So did you just pick it up, or did somebody teach you something? Like how does the fascination begin?
Well, it's slightly murky recollection, but there was a guy coming into school when I was about 8, so I'm in what we call primary school in the UK, 8 years old. So he was doing lessons in the school like once a week. So I got a nylon string 3/4 size of my own. But when I say lessons, you know, I learned Easy G, you know, and then we would do like London's burning, fetch the end, right? That's what the lessons were. And that wasn't hugely exciting. So again, still for me, the guitar just sat there for a bit longer, you know, until then I started actually really listening to the stuff my dad was listening to. So, which was BB's, There Was Always One More Time record, which came out around like 88 or something like that. So, so then I had that as an album that I loved. You know, the other crazy thing was, I was just talking to a friend about this the other day. Even before that, I was into this artist from the UK in the early 80s called Shakin' Stevens, right? People in the US might not know him. But basically, it's like an 80s version of Elvis. And all his tunes are swung. They're all shuffles. And he was my favorite guy as a kid when I'm like 4 or 5 years old. And it was all shuffles, and it's basically 12 bars. I didn't know what that was. For some reason, that was my first favorite stuff. So it all been heading in that direction all along. And then I remember hearing Ry Cooder's version of All Shook Up, right? And he has that stinky intro on it, just the solo guitar. And I just had that and kept rewinding that. Again, not knowing how to play any of it at all, but fascinated by the sound of this guitar. It was like the tone thing, really, more than anything. I was already drawn to that. So somehow we went from there, you know. And I don't really remember exactly how I got playing in a way. Do you know, like, it's really hard to remember. Then I could just sort of do it somehow. It's weird.
Well, did you have people showing you stuff? Like when you stopped having the guy at you know, your school showing you green sleeves or whatever, did you have, you know, somebody that would, you know, stop in and show you something, or someone you would ask questions to? No,
because I was way out in the country in the UK, so I just had records. So the first thing I learned was Voodoo Char, from probably, I think I had Jimmy's version on like a best of the 60s cassette, and Stevie's version that my dad had put on that thing. But so I learned the intro, but my ears were, I didn't even know people were tuned into E flat, so it probably sounded horrendous. I was probably, you know, I didn't know about any of it, but I learned like that in the wrong octave, but figured out the sound, and then I was like, okay, that sounds like blues now. So, you know, and then you've got the minor pentatonic. So I remember learning that, and then I could kind of make licks up, if you know what I mean, by going. Sorry about that click on my system here. I don't know what's going on, but we'll have to live with it. But and then you got the blues. And so I remember that, and then I remember figuring out like how octaves work, right? So I was like, okay, so that is that, and then it's like, oh, you can play that thing here, and then play that thing here. Those are like the two things I remember all of a sudden being like, wow, that's how it works, right? And
And you
then
just
rewinding
and you
cassettes.
kind of it was all on self-discovery.
Yeah, and then, at the same time, I'm buying guitar magazines and reading about it,
Yeah, yeah.
and then then you'd see tabs in there, and I'm sure I went through some stuff like tab wise, but it was by that point it was all kind of easier to just like listen to what and what if your main diet is like BB, Albert Collins, Freddie, Stevie, Hendrix, Clapton. Once you've got that pentatonic down, you can kind of start picking it out from all of them, right? Nobody's doing anything that radical, so.
Yeah.
And that was the main diet for the first 5 years or something, So.
Right. So that's like you're in what would be high, you start to get in high school age, I guess.
Yeah, I'm like 12, 13. And then I always point out, and I didn't realize this till years later how important it was, I immediately started a band. I mean, I've been playing like 6 months, and I'm like, well, I have to have a band. So most of my learning was done in the context of getting together with the guys in the music room after school. And I had a really cool music teacher, and he would let us go in at the weekend, give us the keys to the music department. And, my first gig was on the school's Marlin Sidewinder Strat copy, because I didn't have an electric yet. I was still on that nylon string. So I borrowed that. So we were gigging and playing as a band all the time. And I think that's, especially when we do, True Fire stuff or clinic stuff, and a lot of people play to backing tracks these days, don't they? And that's their world of guitar. But I never did that, and I know you didn't either, right? It was
Never.
I jammed with records, and then I went and played with the guys, and we made music together. And so I've realized that that's quite pivotal to the whole thing. The experience was entirely making music with other human beings for me. So.
Yeah, and these were guys your age from school then.
Oh yeah. So it was like I decided I was going to play guitar, and so a friend of mine, Chris, goes, "Well, I'll play bass," and then another friend of mine, Fraz, goes, "Well, I'll play drums," Another friend, Rob, was like, "Well, I play a bit of guitar as well, but I can play some keys," It was like, and then another friend, John's like, he was the hot drummer in school, so poor Fraz got fired and John got hired. It was like that. And 13-year-old band politics, man.
Yeah. But I mean, man, when you're with like-minded and aged people,
Mm-hmm.
you can grow so fast because the enthusiasm level is through the roof. Like
all
everything
we
is
did.
so fun.
It's all we did every waking hour. Both days of the weekend, every night after school, and we were all into the same stuff. Everybody was getting. We were playing. BB, and I mean, my first gig, there's me, like 13-year-old, voice hasn't broken, singing Manish Boy. It's ridiculous, really, when you think about it. But hey, we didn't know any better, It was that we loved
I'm very
it.
familiar with that scenario. And yeah,
Yeah.
it is ridiculous looking back on it,
Oh,
but
man.
man, you just loved it so much, you wanted
Yeah.
to do. Yeah.
Every waking minute, man. Yeah. And,
Yeah.
dressing the part as well. We looked like a band,
Yeah.
We did. There was no. And by the way, this is in an area of the UK called the Cotswolds, which is the classic, beautiful British countryside, green rolling hills. So it's a very small town. Basically, you'd call it a village, by a few thousand people. So we were the only band in school, and we were definitely the only band walking around town, with with the boots and the jackets, and it was hilarious, really. But that's what we were, It was genuine as well, what I mean? It was totally sincere.
So you said you had a music teacher in school. Were you
Yeah.
learning any music in school at that same time or no?
No, he was very cool. He was a classical guy, classic British school system music teacher. And he didn't really understand what we did, but he knew we were pretty good at it and enthused by it. So he encouraged it, even to the point where I didn't do the music course in school because it was all reading and classical music. But he said to me, "Listen, just turn up on exams days. I know you haven't done the curriculum, and I know you don't read," because I didn't read anything. He goes, "But if you do the improvisation and performance part, I'll pass you on that, and you'll fail on the written part. But that's how cool he was. He just said, just turn up and it'll average out and you'll get a C grade in music. But I didn't go to the classes at all. But we were in there hanging out every day, you know. But he knew I wasn't interested. I mean, I should have. It's ridiculous, really, to have not done it and not learned to read. And, you know, but it just, I wasn't into that. That would have been 15 years old, you know. I wasn't into it. I was just into playing with the band. So I never did, but I played Little Wing for my performance piece, you know. So I got full marks on the performance and failed the written. So.
Right. All right. So you and your friends then are playing. You're starting to get through school, and so it's a small village. I mean, I'm assuming there's not that many places to play. Do you start getting paid gigs yet, or no?
Yeah, the one thing that we had. Especially, there's some pubs around, you know, like we go into the near town of Cirencester, and there was pubs there. And but the main thing we used to do that was really cool, there was a U.S. Air Force base in about 5 miles from the town. It's actually one of the biggest in Europe, called the RAF Fairford. It's a Royal Air Force base, but the U.S. Air Force rented it, and we're talking early 90s here, during the first Gulf War.
Yeah.
So it's where the B-52 bombers would stop from the U.S. on their way to Iraq. It's got the longest landing strip in Western Europe. So they had a rec room. And so this is the early 90s. So we started getting hired to play for the U.S. servicemen at the Air Force Base, because they all loved all the stuff we were playing. Nobody knew who Stevie Ray Vaughan was where I grew up, let alone B.B. King or Howlin' Wolf or something. But these guys, you think in early 90s, they all loved that stuff, man, you know? So so we used to play there, you know, all the time doing these gigs for the U.S. Air Force. So that became like our like home gig, you know what I mean? Which was really, it was just something very perfect about having that right nearby. And when you went in the Air Force Base, it was, you know, like going into America. So all the cars and trucks were American, and they brought everything with them. It was $1 Budweisers, you know, it was like that kind of thing.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting.
Pretty
I didn't
cool.
know that. I'd never heard you tell that story. That's cool.
Yeah. That was a gig. And then other little pubs and, you know, people's like little local house parties and stuff like that, you know what I mean? But
Any
it
of the
wasn't
guys from that band, are they any of them professional musicians?
No, they're not. They all still play a bit here and there, but they're all have different careers now. And but we still see each other. You know, we keep in touch, all of us. And when I'm back there, we'll all go for a beer and stuff. You know, and I'm actually the godfather of John, the drummer's son. You know, so. Yeah, you know, everybody's really tight still. I think the time like that you spend is something that you know you never forget. And like I say, the longer ago it is, the more I realize how formative it was for me having having a band. In some ways, it's the most band I've ever had. You know, like where it's really the band. You know, so
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you finish school then, and it's pretty much time to, like, you know, shit or get off the pot, I guess. Are you gonna
yeah,
go continue school, or are you all in on music? You know,
yeah.
what drives your decision?
I'm all in, man, because
Yeah.
so I was supposed to be going to career vocational classes in you know we call it sixth form, and so from 17 and 18 in UK high school, and I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm going to play guitar, you know. And back then we weren't being offered like anything vocational within the music industry, so nobody said like. Well, have you thought about maybe studio engineering, or perhaps you know you can go to college and do something musical? It was either you go to college and you do English, maths, or science, or something like that, or you don't go to college. It wasn't presented in any other way. Excuse me, but I wasn't going to do it anyway, because by then I'd started going to London to jam sessions, and so that was with Johnny Henderson, my longtime keyboard playing colleague and friend, his older brother James is a guitar player, and so he was a year older, and he had a car, and so we would drive to London and go to these jams, like pro jams, really good ones in London. There was a good scene in this is like '97 now in London, where so I met a bunch of people. There's a guy called Ian Siegel from the UK, who's quite well regarded blues artist these days, and has been for a while. And that's where I met him. We both happened to go to the same jam the same week, and we still do things together. That's 23 years later. So yeah, so that was it then. So then it was moved to London really, and go for it. So my first gig professionally, I was probably not quite even 19, I think I was 18, was at the 100 Club in London, which is where I still play sometimes these days. So I haven't actually progressed from my first show in London, but that was with a great harmonica player, incredible player called Lee Sankey from the UK, who's incredible. And I basically got in bands in London and started to, like that. And here we are now, in some respects.
Yeah, so you had to, you had to just kind of go, like we said, all in. There's no backup plan. You just go to
No.
London, start going to jams, start getting called to play gigs, sideman, playing blues all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. And I was in like 3 or 4 different bands at some point, some of them like straight blues bands, some of them, actually where I met Evan Jenkins, that's drummed with me for many years on and off, and was in like a kind of half blues R&B cover band, where we played, some rock and roll, and you might do Georgia on My Mind, but then we'll do Louie Louie or wherever, like everything, Sweet Home Alabama. So, because of course at that point I'm like, I don't care, I'm playing guitar and living in London, and I'm 19, 20 years old,
Yeah.
And then I got in Dana Gillespie's band. She's a British blues singer that's been around, been active in the music scene since the late '60s. A bit of very well regarded in the UK, and so with her we started touring internationally in Europe. So like my first European tour date was the Blues to Bop Festival in Lugano, Switzerland, which I think is still going now, but it's incredible. It's by the Lake Maggiore in Lugano, Switzerland. I'm like, yes, this is what I want to do,
Yeah.
So none of it, and I'm sure it's the same for you, in the beginning was any kind of grand master plan for world domination. It's just, I just wanted to play. I'm just happy to play, and if I'm traveling and playing, and can afford to get by somehow one way or another, then it's all good, right? There's
Right.
no
Yeah.
other plan.
You're making some money, playing
Yeah.
guitar. You got no overhead. You're a kid. You're having
Hmm.
a blast. There's no greater feeling than that. So okay, so then you've done the band with your friends. Now you've moved to London. You've done sideman stuff. You started to tour a little bit. When do you start to even have the thought of writing your own material and kind of going your own way?
Well, first I didn't even think about writing anything until I went my own way and was sort of forced into it. So what happened was, there's a place still there in London called the Ain't Nothing But the Blues Bar. It's a hole in the wall, real juke joint place, just off Regent Street. And so I'd been playing there with different people, maybe Ian Siegel, Lee Sankey, like it was a spot that everybody would hang out. So I started doing my own little show there, and with the organ trio. So it was Johnny Henderson and a couple of different drummers did it, and we eventually settled on Evan Jenkins. And so we were playing like a weeknight, and this place was rammed. It was going great, but they used to they had a blue light on a blue light bulb above the mixer that was mounted on the wall, and a dB meter. And if you set the blue light off for too long, it would trip the PA and they'd cut you out, So you had to stay under something, and it was like just low enough that you can't fully play. Do you know what I mean? When it's set like, it's like you're holding back the whole time. So I used to borrow my friend Sam Hare's deluxe reverb actually and turn it. So I had a deluxe reverb turned around. That was the most I could get away with, you know, because I had my super reverb by that point, but there was no way in this place. And the stage wasn't even big enough for a full drum kit, and Johnny sat on the floor with his organ, you know, but it was great orchestra. And so we got fired for being too loud, even though we were packing the place. The guy, well, it was one of those, the guy phones me and goes, like, the manager's been telling me how loud it is. I'm like, people love it. Nobody's leaving. Nobody's complaining, you know, and, well, you're going to have to respect it more than that. I'm like, well, then you're going to have to respect me more than that because, you know, at some point I have to say what I'm doing is right, you know. So it was a good start getting fired for being too loud. And I thought, well, then I'm not pleasing all the people all of the time, right? You know? So that was a good one. So then I thought, well, this is cool to not do something with. So that's when I contacted a guy called Richard Pavitt in a gig I'd done also with some other bands. We went and started playing his place, played it a couple of times, and he said, why don't you record it next time you're here, and I'll help you get some more gigs. So we did it on 8 tracks. So organ trio on 8 tracks, 1 overhead, kick and snare, mono Leslie top, mono Leslie bottom bass, guitar and vocals. You know, that was the... and that became my first release at all under my own name, the Matt Schofield Trio Live, you know, and people still bang on about that album to me now. I'm like, if you knew how little we knew that was going to be a record, I mean, it's literally me turning to Johnny and saying, shuffle in C, all right? And then Evan counts it off and I sing Traveling South over the top of it. And that, you know, and Sissy Strut's on there. I mean, we do a soul live tune, you know, because we didn't... we were all still playing in other people's bands. Johnny was touring with Otis Grand, the British blues guitar player, and Evan was in Dennis' band. Evan was like with a rock band on EMI, you know. So everybody was doing all this stuff, you know. So we put that album out. The first review from Blues Matters magazine in the UK said it wasn't blues at all, and that we were a good jazz band, but they didn't understand that it was blues. So that was our first review, because we weren't just going, you know, which I love as well, but we weren't doing that, and it was swinging, and there was 2 5s, and you know, it was somewhere. If you listen to that record, it's somewhere between like Ronnie Earl's '90s stuff and a bit of Robin and the Blue Line, but with organ instead, and the Meters. You know, and Soul Life. It was organ trio. Anyway, we were too jazzy for them, and nothing much has changed since then with the blues people. In fact, right?
Yeah, nothing much has changed.
That's 17 years ago now. So to answer your original question, after that, I was like, well, shit, I better write some songs, and I guess I'm singing as well. You know, so and I'd always sung a bit, but then. You end up growing up in public with your voice as well, you know, because that's always did take a back seat for the first 15 years of playing, you know. So it's always going to be catching up. So.
Yeah, man. So just let's get your perspective then on what you just said about you were too jazz. Then we're always too jazz for the blues, too blues for the jazz. And not rock and roll at all, really. You know, even though we play rock and shit, it's like we don't fit in anywhere, you know? But in my mind, I'm just a fucking blues guitar player. I don't know about you.
Yeah, and honestly, I think, I'll be bold here, I think we're more true to the tradition of blues guitar than a lot of people who claim to say a certain kind of thing is blues guitar. I think John Schofield is more true to the tradition of blues guitar than somebody who's just playing old-sounding licks on old gear, you know? Like, because Muddy didn't do that, BB didn't do that, Albert didn't do that, Albert Collins didn't do that. But if you and me came along tuned to F minor with a capo at the 10th fret, and nobody had done that before, it'd be like, well, that's not blues, you know? So I don't know when innovating became not blues, and sounding the same as everybody else became the blues. So that might be controversial, but every just mean the Stevie Ray's and side of things, because that's always the first criticism lobbed at you as well when you're of a certain generation, right? So I spent years hearing that one first of all. So it's like, which one is it, man? Do I sound just like Stevie Ray, or am I not playing? Am I too jazzy? Which one is it, right? You know, and then it's you sound, if you do anything slightly diminished, then you're just like Robin Ford. And of course, I haven't mentioned him yet, and he was very, very important to me somewhere in the middle of those teenage years, because he was the first time I went, okay, what's more than this pentatonic? You know, just to digress for a second, that was the catalyst for that, and that, of course, is why I ended up being too jazzy for the blues people.
Well, but Robin was mostly, for me, most influential in my mindset, because
that's exactly what I said. Yeah.
Yeah, hearing Robin play blues with Jimmy Witherspoon and Charlie Musselwhite,
Right.
and hearing Robin Blue Line and Yellow Jackets and stuff, it made me realize that it was fucking okay to play whatever you know.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean you disrespect the blues or don't know your shit. No, Robin knew the blues. He'd studied it. He'd done his homework, and it was like all those people. All of a sudden, it was like all those people tell me I couldn't play that in the blues. It was like, no, you're wrong. I respect the blues as much as anybody, you know.
And I know as much about it.
Doesn't mean I all of a sudden don't like the blues anymore.
Well,
like,
that's always been the strange thing, right? It's like, it seems like at some point this rule became that you can only play the blues if you can only play the blues, right? But that's just not true. It's just not true. And by the way, I have bootlegs of B.B. King from the early 90s and mid 80s. And he is shredding diminished lines. Like he's doing Charlie Christian lines that he's learned when he's a kid. Yeah. He's doing Django lines. I've got the recording, man. Yeah. His phrasing is like Louis Armstrong. It's where he's playing all his influences, but they're all gigs where, you know, they're bootlegs where he's not having to be just like B.B. King, because I'm sure he felt the pressure of that just like everybody else, you know. So I've got stuff. Unbelievable guitar playing, and I will say, as well, you talk about Robin, it was Robin's entire approach to the guitar and music, as you say, the whole approach. And also for me, it was hearing the Blue Line. That was the first Robin I heard, and the way the whole band played, it was like everybody in this band is a badass. I've never heard a whole band, and they had a sound. So that was very influential on us, especially in the type of band I wanted to have. It was like, I want a band like the Blue Line, you know. And the same for Johnny Henderson at the time. He was growing up. We were starting to play together, and we were all hearing that together, you know. And but sometimes, you know, when people hear something, certainly in my case that I do, and they think it's Robin, it's actually BB. You know, it's actually BB. And if you really listen to BB, there's so much jazz in his playing, you know, his phrasing and everything, which is that's brings us back to what we're talking about with, you know, the irony is the king of the blues has a big band with horns that's swinging, and he plays sophisticated jazzy lines on his guitar. Absolutely. You know,
like you said, he came up listening to, you know, T-Bone Walker and and, you know, Django Reinhardt and Charlie Christian. That's who he was hearing, you know. Well, those guys
Lonnie Johnson, right?
Shit, you know?
Yeah.
Lonnie Johnson.
So I don't like the dumbing down of, you know, I understand why people say BB is, you could play that one note like nobody else, but he could also play like lots of notes like nobody else. It wasn't because he could only play one note. Yeah. I feel that there's a disservice and a sort of, you know, slightly dumbed down view that I don't appreciate, you know.
Yeah, well, I don't appreciate that in music, but especially in blues in general. I'm just
absolutely.
I reached my boiling point years ago with it. You know,
yeah,
I'm gonna be me, and whatever, you know, they don't like it. It doesn't.
And that's what it should be. What you just said there. What happened to the being me thing? Because that's what I always wanted. And of course, you hear all my influence in there. But more than anything, when I saw that video of Albert Collins, Stevie, and BB. I was like, well, they all sound completely different. You couldn't find three more different sounding guys. They're not even tuned to the same thing on that video. BB's in standard, Stevie's in E flat, Albert Collins is in F.
Yeah.
You couldn't find three more distinctive sounds, and yet they're all killing it. They're all amazing, and that's to me what it was always supposed to be, you know. And then now it's like people want it to be homogenized into a thing. Why does everybody sound the same? And from the more traditional side of things, all the way up to, you know, when I scroll through Instagram, not just in the blues, you know, and I'm just sounding like an old, cantankerous old fart now, but everybody sounds the same, and I don't know why everybody wants to do that. It's like, now you have to learn everybody else's licks. Well, I can't play anybody else's licks very well, but I can play some of my own, you know, and I know that's the same for you, man. It's like, that's what I enjoy more than anything, so... Anyway, I'm ranting now, but, you know, we've done this many times out there, and
many
it's...
Many times. Yeah, the blues world, you know... They fucking bang their own heads against the wall. They eat their young, you know.
They do. They eat their own for sure. It's yeah, it's a funny old situation, man.
Yep. Well, let's get into the 10 questions because I want to know some of the answers to some of these.
Yeah.
When you first started, so maybe it was Voodoo Char because you mentioned it already. But when you figured, what was the first thing that when you got it under your fingers, you were so proud, and it was like that no turning back. Like, I can't believe I got this. This is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, I think it was that Voodoo Char intro. I can definitely remember. I also somehow figured out the intro to Purple Haze, which I'd have to think about now because I haven't played for a while. But you know, because that's probably the most outside thing I'd ever had to come across at that point. So and we wanted to play it with the band, so I had to go do, you know, and also even just the against the, you know, so yeah, that was like the most dissonant thing. So that was probably a big one.
See, you were learning jazz already right there, man. Tritone.
Exactly, yeah, man. Flat fives and shit.
Oh man, there's nothing like that feeling of, you know, you've listened to something a million times, and then all of a sudden it comes out of your hands, and it's like,
yeah,
what the fuck?
yeah,
I did it. Like, it's an amazing feeling. Yeah, yeah. What's the first solo then that you ever learned all the way through, note for note?
I'm not sure that I've ever learned any solo all the way through, note for note. I don't know that I ever did that. I always would play along with records, and I would like learn or kind of get a feel for the opening lick, and then jam, like trade with the record or something. So I'm trying to think I've always learned like bits of them. I'm like, okay, I gotta have that, you know? But I don't think I ever learned anything all the way through. I probably tried to play, it's all Jimmy, isn't it? Probably tried to play Bold as Love solo because it's so melodic, you know, and it's like a classical piece.
Yeah, it is like, yes, that's a very composed solo, yeah.
Yeah, so I probably messed around with that, you know.
What about Stevie? I know you know, because I know you know all those solos, but is that just...
Yeah, but it's more, yeah, like we played the Crossfire solo and all note, that was a good one, 3 super reverbs all at the same time, right?
Yeah.
The Crossfire. Yeah, I mean, at some point, though, you can just play them because you've listened to them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I could do a good approximation. I don't know that I did that. I probably learned Pride and Joy or something like that. You know, I honestly can't remember. But it was never, I just say this honestly, it was never a big feature of learning to play, was learning the whole thing note for note. I was always like, I'll have that and I'll have that. Because it's been a strength and a weakness for me. I am horrible at then playing it back. I don't have any real capacity to learn something and play it exactly on demand again. I can really, honestly, only play what I feel at a given moment based upon my vocabulary. And of course, it's, you know, you're working within the framework, but like, it's really hard. In fact, I had to learn 3 full Allman Brothers albums in their entirety, all the double guitar parts for New Year's Eve. this past year to play with Scott Sherrard and a couple of the Allmans guys. That was the hardest thing I can remember doing in years and years and years because I had to learn it exactly, and I just haven't done that. And either I didn't develop my skill for that, or I lost my skill for that because I didn't need it because I've just been playing either blues or my own songs.
Yeah.
But that kicked my ass learning something. So anyway, I'm digressing, but it kind of is related because I never really followed that skill, so I'm not good at it, you know.
Okay.
So,
All right.
I'm a horrible session guitar.
What's the first thing you play every time you pick up a guitar? Do your hands just go somewhere and play something automatically without thought?
Yeah, something like that, kind of just sort of see how in tune it is, you know. I'm not sure. It's something like that. I know I always picture the Josh Smith one, actually, that ends up with, I think it's something that's got a A major seventh and a B sus thing or something. Yeah.
I moved it to G because people were making fun of me all the time because I would always go,
yeah,
or something like that. So now it's, that's my turn to flip the standby switch and go some way from 1 to 4, basically. Yeah.
I always remember the major seventh and I play that chord a lot as well for some reason.
Well, what about like if you're in a store and you want to check a guitar? Do you have a thing you do like to see if it's any good?
I have no guitar shop chops at all, man. I don't have anything impressive.
Well, I don't mean chops. I mean like to see if you even like a guitar, like to feel.
Probably say I'll play that chord like the E9 thing or whatever that is. Yeah, same kind of thing as you like a mate, because you can just hear how all the notes fit together with something like that. Yeah, that's one as well. Just through like Jimmy through the EBA or something. Yeah. Yeah, it's things like that, isn't it? You know, it's never wailing.
So then, for number 4, it may tie in. Do you have something that kind of runs through your head like a narration, you know, all the time? So I'm hearing a shuffle literally 24 fucking hours a day, and I'm hearing somebody blowing over it. I'm just hearing,
A bit mental
never
sometimes.
stops.
Yeah. It might. I had some shuffle like that all morning today in B flat and just like a head. And then other times I'll get earworms, they call them, right?
Oh yeah.
But it's normally a shuffle, normally swinging. But then I had Band of Gypsies, Power of Soul, Power of Love for the longest time. That was just my entire life was consumed by. I can't remember it. You know, I just had that going forever.
Was so proud. Like figuring that out was a big moment.
Yeah.
Big moment.
Yeah. But that becomes like a massive earworm for me.
Yeah. I'm so bad. Like when it's time to go to sleep, it's like I can't until like I finish that fucking solo that's running through my head. It has to wrap up somehow. And
I sometimes have to listen to something that, put the TV on or something to distract because of. And now I've had horrendous tinnitus this year since those New Year's Eve gigs because we had two full drum kits in the Funky Biscuit,
that's
and
what
it
the
just
Allman
killed
Brothers
me.
will do to you, bro. That's what they do.
Yeah, well, it did. It was Mark on one of the kits, and Fucking hell, man. Yeah, it's so maybe the no gigs since beginning of March thing has been a blessing because I had to get plugs and do. I remember the slide bar thing we did. It was one of my first times playing with plugs in, and it's horrible, man. You know, I missed my tone. So, but it's still
Also, it
ringing.
was ridiculously loud, that gig.
Yes, yeah, but
But what do you expect with like 102 rocks on stage? I mean,
yeah, it's not over the top at all.
yeah, not at all. Number 5, man. When did you feel like you started to find your voice? Was there like a little moment where you lucked into something, or just something fell out and you were like, "Ooh, I should go more that way." That sounds like something no one else. That's me. I'm finding me.
Yeah, I guess it was when actually when I started the organ trio with Johnny and Evan, and I thought, yeah, there's a context for me to put my playing in, so it's not going to be. Well, it was a Strat through a super reverb, but I was determined to not have that define me, if you know what I mean, as being Stevie. And it's like, no, I can still do this and not sound like Stevie. And funnily enough, then I started playing a Tele or 335 sometimes, and everybody's like, it's just like Robin. So I went back to the Strat and I was like, okay, I think I can be the white guy that plays the Strat through a super reverb and doesn't sound like Stevie exactly, even though, of course, Stevie's in there, you know, but it's a different kind of playing. But it was that, and conversely, also going, well, I'm going to put hopefully some of that Robin-esque sophistication into a Strat and a super reverb kind of tone, you know? So it was that. But the most I ever started to realize I had my own sound was when you start hearing other people who sound like you. And then you're like, shit, that sounds like me. And then you really hear it more than when you're playing yourself. Do you know what I mean?
It's
like,
weird. It's weird.
Yeah.
And it's
so now
not like it's not the long licks, I'm realizing. Like, there's people who rip off my licks. Sure, which is an honor. Like, it's amazing. But it's the little ways that I end phrases that now I'm starting to hear, like, wait a minute. Like, people, like, that's my little ending of a phrase, you know? And it's like, wow, that is weird. Yeah.
I say this as humbly as possible, but scrolling through Instagram for me, and I'm sure for you, is quite a trip sometimes. And like, in terms of hearing things coming back at you, and you're like, this is crazy, man. And I don't say that because like so well known or anything like that, but you're like, I am in the fabric of this whole thing now.
It's
fucking
weird. It's weird.
Yeah.
I keep hearing people play this. Like, if I'm playing whatever, ending a phrase by going that. And it's like, wait, I do that a million times a night. You know, there's no mistaking they got that from me. You know?
Yeah, and you're almost kind of like, you don't want to be super claiming of it for a while because you feel, oh, well, you know, we're all doing the same thing. But then after a while, I'm like, holy shit, this guy sounds so much like me. It's ridiculous. So he knows more of my licks than I do. You know, like sometimes, because I'm like, I even forgot that one. I don't even play that anymore. But it's great as well.
You ever look at people teaching your licks on a video and be like, that's fucking wrong. That's not how we play.
I have stepped in and corrected people here and there on a couple of things, actually. But, oh, man. But, of course, it's incredibly flattering as well, you know.
Incredibly flattering, yeah.
I was talking to Kevin Haze, you know, that drummed with me, and this was played with everybody over the years, many years with the Robert Cray band. And he was talking about guys like us, and he goes, well, you know, it's like you guys, you came from the young up and comers, the new guys, you know, to these kind of in the fabric of the whole thing, kind of journeyman players, without ever having the golden years in between. You know, so it's like we never got the tour bus and got rich. It's
Yeah.
like we went straight to what's the word I'm looking for? Like just stalwarts or something of
Oh, it's yeah, that's weird because we skipped out on the glory and the money
yeah. We
because
never had the gold record and the bus, but now everybody plays like us.
yeah, dude. I mean, how many times does a 19-year-old come to your gig and go, "You're a fucking legend.
Yeah,
This is a legend."
yeah.
Me with the goat. And they take a
I
picture and
don't want
it's
to
like,
use.
yeah,
I always icon. There you go. We're now. It's you can go from up and coming to icon with absolutely zero financial reward or basically a career to talk about. You know?
yeah, yeah.
Iconic losers.
That's right. That's right. Oh man.
Yeah.
Number 6. What do you consider your biggest weakness on the guitar?
Not being able to play stuff that I need to be able to play on demand. So really, I, I, I've allowed that to slip in the pursuit of improvisation and just not caring and just be having the luxury of just playing exactly what I feel. My ability to deliver a performance. I'm a horrible, horrible session guitarist. I gave it up when I was 19 because I wasn't very good at it, and I could only play what I thought sounded good on the track and not what the producer wanted me to play. And I'm like, so I left the session. It was a pop session in London, and I said, listen, I don't want to waste your time. I don't think I'm the guy for this. So I'm like 19, and I go back to my shared flat in London, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm just going to have to be like Eric Clapton or Carlos Santana or something, where they only get the call to do their solo. This is like 19-year-old me, but I was, but in a way, then my friend Prakash John and Jordan John up there in Canada. I remember Prakash talking about like after years, you think you can still do all the things you always did when you were younger, even if you don't do them anymore. But gradually, they actually, if you don't maintain them, they do slip away, the ability. And so, in my selfish goal of doing whatever I feel like on the guitar, it has definitely weakened my ability to play things on demand. So, like I say, that Allman Brothers thing was an absolute nightmare for me. I can't remember working that hard on something. And then you realize what I'm actually saying is I'm lazy about that stuff. I am. I like playing how I play, and at this point, what comes out is pretty much, what I want it to come out. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm trying to play like something that I can't at this point.
Right.
If I wanted to be more jazzy, I'd be more jazzy by now. I'm too lazy to learn any more of that, because it all seems too much like thinking about it and hard work for me. So I guess the reason I play, sorry, this is a long answer, but the reason I play ultimately is to just play. And that's something I've especially learned during this time off is, man, I miss it, and like, it's like a mental health thing, So I've kind of fully immersed myself in being like that with my music and just getting it out and not caring about anything other than that. But that leaves a lot of things by the wayside. And then when there's a global pandemic, you find that you don't have that anymore. And and like we were talking about before we started this, doing a channel like this or something, that seems like such a massive undertaking because I've let all that go by the wayside. But it just in the pursuit of this kind of self enjoyment of making music how I feel like,
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the honest answer for me is I'm doing this just because I have to somehow create some motivation to be playing right now
Mm-hmm.
and to be doing something because, like you said, 90% of what I identify as is just gone. I'm an
Mm-hmm.
improviser first and foremost. And that means
Yeah.
not sitting on the couch improvising by myself, even though I do that every fucking day. No, it's improvising with a band, in a
Yes.
moment, in front of people. And it's like, so now I'm having to take the other 10%, which is still all really great. It's playing guitar, it's working on music, it's producing records, it's teaching lessons, it's doing whatever. It's better than working at Home Depot. I'm not complaining. But
Sure.
I'm having to squeeze everything that fulfills me out of the 10% and not the giant chunk that really is the main part of me.
That
That's
we do the whole thing for in the first place and always have had. For
always.
me, and that's the thing. I'm trying to explain to people. It's 29 years since I started. No, since I did my first gig. It's 30 years since I've been playing.
Yep.
And you can't go 29 years of giving your life, not, and I say sacrifice. I don't mean that in the way some people sacrifice their lives, you know.
Yeah.
But we have, you give up many other things, you know. Like I've kept my overheads very low. I don't even own a car myself, you know, because that was just an extra expense because I was gone half the month and all, you know, everything in your life. To then just go, well, we can't do that anymore. Shit, it was only 30.
Yeah.
That's half a lifetime, you know. So
Yeah.
it's, from a mental point of view, it's hard to get your head around as well, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough. It's a brave new world. Brave new
Yeah.
world.
Sorry about these people texting me.
That's all right.
You keep hearing the pinging. I
Ding.
can't turn that off on the computer. Thank you, Apple. All right.
An A. Uh, what? Who's a huge influence on your playing that people would be surprised to hear?
Um, Billy Gibbons.
Oh, okay.
I love the early ZZ Top. In fact, I love all ZZ Top. You know, even the records that other people don't like. But yeah, man, Billy, his phrasing and the tones, and yeah, from a guitar point of view. But he's my biggest odd influence. I love Eric
And it's
Johnson as well,
yeah.
but I never really tried to play like him. I just like listened to his music, and I stole one lick and put it on my record, but swung it instead. But Billy, anytime, man, as soon as I got my record player, when I got this place, and I started getting my vinyl again, that was the first stuff I bought, was the early ZZ Top records. All
Nice.
those tones, his timing, you know, because, and that's a really, he just made everything always like just feel kind of nasty, you know, and that's,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah,
Yeah.
Billy.
All right. Good answer. All right. I'm curious about this one because you like both. So, would you rather have a great guitar and a shitty amp, or vice versa? A crappy guitar but a
Um,
great amp on a gig. On a gig.
on a gig, I think I go for the good amp, you know.
Yeah. Me
I
too.
think so.
Me too.
Although without it's real. Well, it depends. I was going to say without good frets, you know.
No, a playable
Then
guitar. A
yeah,
playable
okay, yeah.
guitar, but not your guitar. You know
Oh,
what I
then
mean?
you give me a Chinese Squire with decent frets and a two rock, and I'm sound the same. They lost my guitar on tour in Italy last
Mm-hmm.
year, and so I had to borrow a guitar for the show. But I had the two rock TS1 rig that I'd been hooked up with by the Italian guys. So we got there, and they had a road worn 50s Mexican strap that hadn't been touched. It was rusted. The strings were rusted. It had not been touched in like 5 years. So I did a setup on it in 15 minutes, changed the strings, straightened the neck, you know, adjusted the pickups, cleaned it up, did the gig. Sounded 99% the same as my own. I didn't dig it as much, but
Yeah.
I'm sure there's videos on YouTube. If you see me playing a maple neck strat, sunburst strat, it sounds so much the same. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm 100% with you. The audience would get a better show in that scenario with the amp and whatever guitar. If I had my pedal board and my amp
Yeah.
and whatever guitar, it's going to be a better show than if I have this guitar and a JC 120. You know.
Yeah, and I've had it the
So
other way around as well, you know, or where a silver-faced twin with broken reverb and one blown speaker, you know.
yeah. Yeah.
It's like, I can't do this, you know.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, we're on the same page, but it's been split 50-50 on the answers.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people who I've interviewed rely very much on their personal instrument for part of their sound. So it's like they
Hmm.
almost can't do their gig without it. And some are more like us, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
usually improv guys versus non-improv guys, you know what I mean? But
Yeah, I can see that, yeah. And like I can make a Les Paul work or something, even though I never play
exactly.
one,
Yeah.
but
Well,
Yeah.
like I interviewed Tosin Abasi yesterday, and he couldn't play a gig without the 8 string fan fret,
Of
because
course,
all his
right.
songs revolve around it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah. Um, what keeps you, like, and maybe you're not right now in the pandemic, but what keeps you, like, motivated to maybe work on new stuff and, like, pick up new things into your playing? And do you think about
Yeah,
music important to you?
it is tough, isn't it? You know, but I've been through lots of different emotional states with this thing, and not feeling like doing anything. You know, then feeling like almost like guilty about that as well. You know, so then
Hmm.
you feel like you have to do something. I'm glad I seem to have had a fairly steady trickle of just the odd tracks coming in where I've been like, okay, I better get my shit together because I got to sound good on this. So I was real happy. Alan Evans from Soul Live sent me a track to play on, you know, and with some cool people on it. I was like, okay, better. I need to sound good on this, you know. And that's when I'd been away for a month for some family reasons, so I had a guitar there, but I wasn't really thinking about, you
Yeah.
know, music at all, you know. So I in fact, I had to say to him, "Can you give me a couple of weeks because I can't record and I'm just not there, you know." And I
Yeah.
wanted to be good, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so usually it comes back to listening to stuff, you know, mostly the same stuff I've always listened to, and that makes me want to play. You know, I've
Yeah.
got about like 3 projects that I could pull up here on my computer and do work on that need to be released. You know, I have a trio record with Johnny and Evan that we tracked 2 years ago. I sang last year in between tour dates, and now just needs mixing, and I mess around with it, and then I go, oh well, what am I going to do with this anyway? Because you know, like the only reason to release a record now is so you can tour with it, you know, and I can't get. So what do? Put it out, and then it just I get nothing for it on Spotify. I mean, like, and
Pretty
then
much.
by the time my European agents will be like, so we need a new record to book you some gigs. And I'm like, what happened to that one, man? I wrote
Yeah.
all those songs, you know, like
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you now so now everything comes with like a double set of possible scenarios as well, because there isn't just a, well, I don't really feel like making a record, but I need to make one because I got to get some gigs. Or now it's like, well, is there even a point in doing it because I'm not going to make any money back from
Oh,
it?
dude,
And
I know. Yeah. I've got two in the can, and it's like I have no interest in putting either one of them out anytime soon. You know?
yeah,
I don't know what I'm going to
I
do
don't
with them.
know. So it's like, okay, I'll make some more True Fire courses because that pays my bills. It really does. Um, and I've come to enjoy that, but I didn't really plan on being a guitar teacher either. You know,
No,
after
no, absolutely
20
not.
years of touring and recording, it was like I thought that's what I did. And I was happy to do my first True Fire course because it was like, okay, cool, I'll put something out. Hey, it'll be a bit of mailbox money, you know? But I didn't really plan on being like a teacher. I already was a thing for years. I already have been a thing that I do, you know?
Well, it's funny.
So,
There was in Guitar World recently. They did a story about the something. First, they did the poll they always do, which whatever, but then they did something about, like, the best blues songs released in the last 5 years, and somehow I got one on the list, right? Which was weird
nice.
because I'm never in any of those magazines. But what it said about me was Los Angeles based educator Josh Smith. And I thought,
Oh, yeah.
wait, what? What? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Man, I don't think I've ever been mentioned in Guitar Player magazine ever. I
I've
don't
never been
think.
a guitar player, not once in my whole life. Only Guitar World and vintage guitar, guitar overseas, but never guitar player, not one time.
Vintage guitar, one guy there used to really love me, and one guy, Dan Forte,
Yeah.
really had a hard on against me.
It's weird how that works, man. Yeah, you would think we would have gotten in Guitar Player magazine by accident by now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've never even been mentioned.
And of course, it's
Unless
the only
if
one I
somebody
care.
took out an advert for some gear, maybe in a Two Rock advert or
Yeah,
something.
but of course, it's the only one I care about. Not, I don't mean that really. I'm thankful for the sport, but that's the one I've had a subscription to since I was fucking 9 years old. You
That
know.
was my favorite when I was a kid. That was the one. I would be in Guitar Player magazine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
All
yeah.
right, number 10, man.
Yeah.
want to be in 5 years? Is it just keep doing this? Is it, find some new lane to like bring things like, do you have even a 5 year plan?
I don't. I try and have a 5 day plan at the moment. Yeah. It really does feel like that, and and that's the crazy thing about this year because it seems like 5 minutes ago since March when everything stopped, when my world stopped. But it also seems like 5 years since then as well. In a weird way, it's like this dualistic time thing. So 5 years. Well, in 5 years, I would like to be uh, getting back on my tour bus after a nice gig in a reasonable sized theater. I don't want to play the places that I was sometimes starting to play at some points. Do you know what I mean? Like those nice arts theaters, the places. Or a great festival, I never aspired to play the Enormodome. I don't enjoy seeing gigs there, and but I just always wanted a bus, and not just specifically for the bus, but the idea of playing my music and traveling around in some degree of comfort. I don't need a huge crew. I don't need private jets. But, for the last 20 years, or 15 with my own band, I have driven the van myself, and that's fine. But by the time we come out of this thing, and maybe can do any of it again, I'm going to be 45, I'm 43 now. So you start thinking, well, I maybe don't want to be driving the van every day myself. That's why Robin's not touring much anymore, and he's working on studio stuff and producing because it kicks your ass,
Yeah, yeah.
But I could happily be like BB and get back in the bus and get to the next gig, So I've never attained that dream, and I know you as well is the same. That's really all we wanted, right? Because
And it doesn't seem like too much to ask.
no,
But it
because
is.
you get like
But it is.
this growth sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? It would mean 300 to 500 more people coming to see me consistently.
Yep.
Not 3 to 5,000 more, but
Hundreds more. Yeah.
yeah, a few hundred more people than what I'd built up,
Yeah.
previously.
Instead of having 300 people or four, or if we could have
Yeah,
800 people,
a
700,
thousand people.
1,000,
Yeah,
that
700. Yeah,
it's enough to change our life and just
yeah,
have the organization be self-sustaining, and not just
yeah.
that, be happy. Have the guys around you who want to be there. You're paying them enough. Like it's not life-changing money, but it's money where, man, they're happy to be there and everybody's in a good fucking mood all the time. That's it.
And
That's all I want.
that feeds back into the creativity as well, you see, because
Yeah.
otherwise you're just on a hamster wheel. And
Yeah.
that I honestly have been burnt out. I haven't released a record in ages because I did get burnt out, and I still love to play, and I didn't want to stop doing that. I didn't want to stop doing gigs and touring, but you do just get onto this hamster wheel of it. So this has been good in some respects for a reset of that and an examination about maybe what I want to do. But I still just want to get on my bus, go to the next town, load in, play a room big enough to have a couple of good amps on the go. But that's because you get in a nice arts theatre 500 type capacity thing. You can rock a couple of good amps in there without anybody crying too much.
Yep.
I basically want me to be the determining factor of what happens with my music, in terms of my ability to play it or I don't want to be subject to other things lowering the level.
Yeah.
So that would be the place to be. So yeah,
Well,
fingers
again,
crossed, eh?
it doesn't seem like too much to ask. It should be a realistic goal, for both of us. And I'm hoping
Yeah,
we can.
yeah,
I hope we
totally.
get there.
Yeah, man, me too. I'd really be bummed to get to the end of this whole thing and have never quite got that. Give me one bus tour of my own.
Yeah. Yeah. I know the feeling, man, and I'm with you
I
on
know
that.
you do. Yeah, yeah.
Dude, well, we
So
made it to the end of the 10 questions, and
yeah, man.
we didn't depress everybody because we bitch a lot, but you're listening to the real shit.
It is the real stuff, man. It is. There's No way around it, you know.
Yeah.
It's the blues,
Yeah.
man. It's the truth.
It's the truth. That's right. Yeah. 5 notes and the truth. Yeah. So, dude, thank you for doing this and for taking the time out of your day,
Oh, thanks for
to come
having me,
here.
man.
And there will be links to all things Matt Schofield underneath this video, including the links to his True Fires that get him more money. So buy them from this link. And for members, we will do a little turn two video now where we'll teach you a lick or two. And if you're not a member, hit join or at least please subscribe. I appreciate the support. And dude, Matt, thank you very much.
Thanks, Josh, mate. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Stay well.